You went hunting and you forgot something. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be your host today on Archer Talk 101. What we're going to talk about today is what you want to do to get ready for your hunt. In previous ones, we've talked about tree stand safety and how to make sure your bow is ready to go. But are you ready to go? One of the things you want to do is make sure you're practicing with your hunting equipment and taking shots from different angles. If you're hunting from the ground, you might need to take shots standing, which is kind of almost rare. You might be taking a shot while you're kneeling down. So try taking some shots kneeling down, see how that works with your bow. Now, if you're shooting a recurve or a longbow, that might be kind of difficult because of the length of it. But most compounds, you're going to be just fine shooting off the ground. Try shooting from there because as you're sneaking up on your animal, whether it be a deer or something else, you're going to have times when you're going to be sneaking. You might be kneeling or crawling, getting up to your target, and then you're going to have to draw and shoot from kneeling position. And have you done that before? Is it something new for you? You don't want to have the first time you try shooting off your knees being the first time that you have to make the shot and make it count. If you're shooting from a tree stand, you might want to set one up. If you have a place you can set one up and take some shots at it, standing in there, take some shots sitting down. If the tree stand has a seat in it, which a lot of your hang on tree stands do, some of your platforms don't, your ladder stands, but try shooting sitting down at different positions. I know one time I was sitting down because I couldn't stand up, took the shot, and my lower limb hit the tree stand. And guess what? I didn't even come close to hitting the deer. So you want to practice on there. That's something that I didn't do at that time. So I learned from my mistake here is you want to practice from your tree stand if you can set it up, and then try shooting at different angles. Try shooting, straight. I have to turn around to be at a weird angle. When you're trying to shoot, they come in. Your right hand, you're set up for left-handed shot, but they come off your right-hand side. So now, how much can you move to shoot off to that wrong side and still make a good shot? And then you have to practice shooting down because you're in a tree stand. And if that deer comes in, 10 yards, you're going to have to shoot it differently than if it's 20 yards. Or if it's in at 5 yards, you're going to shoot them differently because remember, your form is not just dropping your arm. That changes everything. You have to bend at the waist. So have you practiced bending at the waist, bending down all the way until you get to a point where you're bent over quite a ways. You might have to get out the lean to get around a tree. So how trustworthy of your safety harness? Because remember, you're up in the tree stand, you have a safety harness on. And depending, getting to know where that's at, how far you can get close to the edge without stepping off and still be feeling safe. So you're going to practice all those things. That's just, practicing getting ready for the hunt. Now, the next one to go into is your tree stand. Do you have your tree stand already set up? Is it a place that you can go set up a tree stand and leave it there prior to going hunt? Or do you have to set it up the day you go out and then pull it in that night when you're done hunting? If so, you're going to have to plan your hunt a little bit differently because you got to remember you're going to be going out there and setting up your tree stand. So you need to make sure you know how to set it up in very low light. So if you have a tree in your yard, sometime go out in the middle of the night, set your tree stand up in your own tree, just to see how it's going to work. If you have a ladder stand, can you set it up by yourself, or is it one that you need to have somebody there to help you? Uh, that's all stuff you need to figure out ahead of time before you just go and say, "Oh, I'm going to go hunting today," and have nothing planned. So that's something you want to do, and then of course make sure you pay attention to your safety climbing up in your tree stand when you're setting it up. Remember, go back to the tree stand safety where we talked about putting your tree stand up safely, where you're always tethered to the tree the whole time going up. Whether you're using a limeless line or you're just using your strap to go around, you always want to be strapped to the tree. Don't depend on you hanging on. So now we've got the tree stand. You decide we're going to be there. Now, if you're going to use a blind, do you have your blind set up? Or you need to set it up ahead of time. Have you set your blind up in the dark? Because when you're going out, set it up before hunting, it's going to be in the dark. Unless you hunt evenings and then you have daylight to set them up. But I like hot mornings because there's a lot of good activity first thing in the morning and then last thing at night. The advantage of the morning is I have the whole day to look for signs, when you shoot the deer or whatever the animal is, you have time, you can track it in daylight. Once it gets dark, it gets a little more difficult to track. So I prefer the morning hunts, in which case I'm setting up in the dark. Have you climbed into your tree stand safely? Because remember, the last thing you want to do is fall out of your tree stand. If you remember back to tree stand safety, that is the number one reason why an archer will get hurt, injured, or even killed, not come home from a hunt, is because they fell out of a tree stand. So now then you need to let's look at clothes. Uh, that is kind of open depending on where you're hunting. If you're hunting here in Nebraska, early season, it doesn't get very cold. It's normally pretty warm. It gets warm. A lot of times you're in a t-shirt during the day, but at night it can get a little cool. Now, if you're hunting in November or December, we can be down in the single digits. So you need to prepare for that. So what kind of clothes are you going to wear going in? Uh, are you going to wear your big coveralls to sit in there because it's going to be, around freezing or a little bit below, still in the double digits, but it can get really cold. Do you have the clothes for it? You want to make sure you have the proper clothing to go out there and spend the time. I know when I first started, my boots weren't really, they were insulated, and I had maybe a couple hours and my feet were starting to get holes cold. So I was done. Now I have a lot better boots, so my feet don't get cold like that. But that's something that you need to look at, is the clothes, depending on the weather you have. Do you have weather that is going to be uh, getting really cold or really hot? If you're hunting like in some of the southern states, don't really get that cold normally. So now you're dealing with, hot and humid during the day. It's going to be even hotter. So you might need to have something in the morning to cover up with that you can shed. That's something you look at, is when you're walking in, how much are you going to generate heat and walking in? So now if you come in, wintertime here, it's going to be cold, it's going to be cold. You have your big heavy parka, your big heavy bibs, and your big old heavy boots on. You walk in, by the time you get in there, now you're sweating because it's so cold, but you got too much on. So that's when to dress in layers. So dress in a light layer, walking in, because you're going to generating heat once you get in there, get your tree stand all set. And the last thing you do before you get in, put your safety belt on, is you're going to climb down, put your coveralls on, redo your safety harness so it's on the outside of your jacket, or it runs inside of the jacket, however it works best for yours. If you have a big heavy parka, you want it probably on you, and just run the strap out of the inside of the coat. And that way, because it fits you better, not designed going outside of a coat. So you're going to have your light stuff on, your harness, and then your big heavy coat on top of that. And now then you climb up your tree stand, and now you're able to sit or stand for long periods of time because you've dressed properly. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is, what do you need to take with you? Now, of course, if you're bow hunting, which is what this channel is about, you're going to have your bow, your arrows, and if you're using a release, your release. You want to make sure you have all those. If you have a release that will actually hook on to your string, don't do that walking in. It's too easy to have something hit it, and then now you've lost your release. And now you're done hunting because you don't have a release. Unless you practice your bow with fingers, you can normally shoot a release. It's not going to shoot the same. It's going to be completely different. And have you practiced it? And that's something you want to look at. Now, a lot of the new bows, where they get really short, like 28, 29-inch axle to axle length, that string angle is so sharp, you can't get your fingers in there very well. So you take your three fingers, and now that is going to squash all of them. Now, even when they had longer ones, what happened to me is my ring finger would start going numb after I shot with fingers for a while, because I was used to, shooting recurves, and, they're longer. So my ring finger would start going numb from shooting. So I had to go to release because of the pinch. And that was on your 28-inch axle bows. Now they're, you've got 10 inches less, 28 to 30 to 32, and they're getting even worse. So have you practiced with that? So now if you have a release, buy another release or a backup release. Keep that in your backpack. Now, I don't have to be a nice one like your first one. I have a handheld that I use. It's a fairly expensive release. And I have another handheld I have as a backup. It's not near the quality, but it's like a third the cost. Then in wintertime, because I don't like using a handheld because I have my hand over so I can feel the release, I have a strap-on one. And that one is there. And then I also have a Velcro one as an extra one. Now I don't carry all those with me. I'll carry my main release and then the strap on, the strap release on, the wrist strap. And that's because when it gets really cold, I don't like putting that cold metal in my hand because, if it's 10 or 20 degrees out, that metal is going to be 10 or 20 degrees in my hand and it's hard to hold it like that. So I use the wrist strap one when it gets really cold. And because the way I shoot my form, it doesn't matter which release I have. The only thing changes is the position of my hand on my face from here to here. My hand turns a little bit depending on the release I'm using. So that's the same because I use my anchor point. I got a kisser button, a nose touching the string, and then the peak. By the time those three are lined up, doesn't matter what my hand's doing because those are all lined up. So now, what do you carry in your backpack? Now, one, water. You must have water with you because you get out there, you need some water to drink. And then food, depending on, if it's one day, you can take some snacks. Sometimes it's a little nice to have something to munch on if you're going to be out there for all day. If you're going to do a morning hunt, eat in the morning, and then you'll be back by noon, there's probably no reason to take any food, but you definitely want water. Then the next thing, you want to make sure you have a first aid kit. It could be something just as small as a couple Band-Aids, or it could be a full one, full trauma kit where you have the tourniquets and all the guns, depending on what your knowledge is of what you need. But you at least need to have something to take care of cuts and scrapes. You're putting up your tree stand and being cold, your knuckles hit the bark, because your gloves are binding up using your hands, put them in, and you get a little nick on your hand, throw a little Band-Aid on it and be done. Or you get cut on something, that's not unusual when it be in the wintertime when it's cold. You cut yourself a little bit easier, it seems like, than, during the summertime, just the way it is. The other thing you want to make sure you have is a flashlight, and either a backup flashlight or extra set of batteries. You want to make sure that you have a flashlight because if you're out there in the morning in the dark or coming at night in the dark, you need a flashlight to see what you're doing. Some of the headlamp ones that fit on your head or on a hat, there's some that fit on the brim of a hat. Those are nice if you're doing something that are not really bright. You don't need these great big bright flashlights for most of the time. Like the little mini mags, little small light puts out just a little bit. All you need is just enough to see. The more light you have, the more you're going to alert others in the field. Other animals. I remember one time I was walking into a tree stand and had a little mini flashlight on, just a little bit to see the trail, and a deer got up and run off. Well, I turned off the flashlight and just let it settle down, and then I had just a small dim light as I'm walking into my tree stand, and I'm getting to my tree stand here. What comes by? This deer. Wasn't shooting time yet, but this deer come walking by my tree stand. That one, it got up, didn't run very far. And because I stopped and froze and it didn't see anything, then it relaxed and come by. So you don't need a big bright light for that. Now, if you're out searching for trails, sometimes a big bright flashlight can help, but other times it's going to drown out that the track that you see. So sometimes a more focused beam because you focus on one spot instead of a big old area. Now, the next thing you want to have in your backpack is a knife. For sure, at least one, and possibly even a sharpening stone for it, so that when you do need a knife, you have one. Whether you're cleaning the deer or you need to cut something off, and now you have something. The other thing that works nice is one of the little hand saws. Have a little hand saw in your backpack because you have a branch. You're up in your tree stand, you see this one branch is just right in your way, everything you do. Well, go ahead and trim it off as long as you're in an area that allows you to trim branches off of trees. Go ahead and trim that branch off. If there's something on the ground that's blocking, that the trail's coming along and you want to clear a little path, then go ahead and do that. You just got to remember, if you're disturbing stuff in the forest, you're actually where the deer lives, so they're going to recognize some things different. But if you're not leaving a lot of scent, then you're okay with that. Now, the other thing you want to do is you have yourself a rope out. If you're shooting up a tree stand, a rope is required. You're going to hang that. Now, don't have to be a big one. It can be just a little small, like a paracord or something. Just a small rope that you hang off your tree stand or someplace off your tree that you drop down. You fasten your bow to it as you hoist it up. You never want to climb up a tree stand with your bow in your hand, because now you can't have 3 points of contact, because you got one hand busy with a bow. Now, how do you reach your next hand? As soon as you take a foot off, now you got two, and you only went three. The other thing you want to do is a compass. There's times when you get turned around even in a familiar place. There's one place I was hunting, it's public land, and I was helping a friend who had his tree stand. I knew where mine was from there. I walked in, we dropped him off. I wanted to go find mine, and I ended up walking right past my tree stand. Okay, this area is not right. I walked all the way down past it. I still couldn't get to it. And I was like, okay, now I'm turned around. Took out my compass. I knew which direction I had to go. I got out, went back in, walked straight to my tree stand. But without that compass, I was like, okay, I'm turning around which way. I had to keep walking until I found something I knew. Either it was the river or the other end of the property or out to where I needed to on the walkway. So sometimes that can help you. If you're in a big area where you're not sure where you're at, you can be, it's like you're on a great big old property. Say that you're in the mountains or something. You might need a compass to know where you're at, because you can't always depend on your cell phone getting signal to give you a GPS tracking. And one thing you want to remember is take some extra clothes. If you're not expecting to spend a night and all of a sudden you have to spend the night, you might need some extra clothes, or even if it just gets cold. Sometimes it's nice to put on extra clothes. And that's another point you want to look at is when you're wearing all those clothes, can you draw your bow? How does it affect your shooting? Try shooting with all those clothes on. Now, it might be, if you're shooting, in the summertime getting ready, it might be first thing in the morning, you get up, you put on your hunting clothes, and you take a few shots before it gets too hot, and you just start roasting in your big winter clothes. But try them and see, because that's going to change the way things are shot. So now the next thing you want to have is something to make a shelter out of. Now, it could be part of your extra clothes you could use to make a shelter, or it could be a tarp that you carry with, a small one. It don't have to be one of the great big ones, just a small one, or even one of those space blankets. Those take up almost no room at all. And they actually work pretty well at keeping your body heat in. So you could throw one or two of those in your backpack and have one you can lay down on the ground. One thing we do on the ground is just go ahead and you gather up some leaves and whatever, give you a little insulation between that and the ground if you have to spend some time outside. Next thing is, if you're in an area where it can still be raining, like Nebraska early season, we're going to have rain September, October. We could have rain, sleet into November. December, not normally any rain, but we could have snow. You want to have something to protect yourself from the moisture. And a little rain gear, take some rain gear with you. That could be one of those disposable little one-time use ponchos. Those work, at least keep the moisture off, the rain off of you. Now, some of your hunting clothes are naturally kind of water resistant. Not going to be like a poncho, but they're going to be something like that. Now, if you have any medications you need to take, think about that. Because if you're going to be out there just till noon, you might be all right. But say you end up being all day long, do you have meds you might need to take that night? Or let's say you end up getting stuck and you have to spend a night. What do you have to have? Can you get by without them till the next morning? So that's something to think about is that. And then, of course, make sure you have a lot of water with you so that you can keep hydrated, because that's going to be your biggest problem if you have to spend a night is, now I'm going 24 hours without any water. You need to have some water. So that's what you need to do, is take some of that. Now, probably one of the most important things that you can think of, or that I can think of, that you need to let somebody know what your plans are, where you're going, where you can be at, and when you plan to be home. Because where you're going, it could be, I'm going to um, this person's farm, I'm hunting his farm, and I'm going to be set up on this part of their farm, and I should be home. You hunt till sunset, uh, a little bit after sunset, so within an hour there. So you can say I should be home within an hour after sunset, uh, depending on how far you are away. And that's where you take your phone with you. So if you go out and say you're trying to track something, you're tracking, and it start getting late, pick up the phone, say, hey, I'm tracking a deer or whatever you're tracking. I'll let you know, when I find it. Then you find it or you give up, and then just call and say, hey, I'm on my way home. That way they don't get worried, because if you're supposed to be home by 6 or 7 o'clock at night and it's already 10, and like that's 3-4 hours, what happens? So people get worried in that way. Um, they're not worried about you. Now, one quick note on cell phones is you don't want to have your cell phone ring or turn on, because the last thing you want to do is have that deer or whatever the animal is coming in, you're at full draw, and all of a sudden ring, ring, ring. Yeah, or it beeps when you get messages, because how you get messages all the time, like beep, and then now you don't get your shot because they didn't stop in the right place. Now it could be helpful if they're at the right place and you need to get them stopped, and all of a sudden the phone rings, that's going to stop them. But yeah, it could also scare them off, because they could hear that and just run off. So that's what you want to look at with your cell phone. Either have it on vibrate, and if it doesn't vibrate too loud, just put it on airplane mode until you get home. And then once you're done hunting, turn it on, and just let whoever knows where you're at know that you're going to have your phone off at the time you're there, so you won't be able to call them. That way they're not calling and calling and calling. It's like, why can't I get hold of them? And then all of a sudden run out and run through your area right at perfect time. So that's kind of something you need to look at when you're getting ready to go hunt. There's other things that you might think of, but this is just a basic thing that I put in, that I have all this stuff with me when I'm going hunting. I have extra releases. I have extra clothes. I strap them to the outside of my backpack. I have a compass in there. I have extra knives. I have a fire starter for starting a fire if I need to. You can carry lighters, but I have a magnesium striker that I can use to start a fire if I need to start a fire. There's a lot of things that you have, and I'm doing this whether we're going out for an evening hunt or a morning hunt or an all-day hunt. I pretty much, this is the pack I carry with me every time I go hunt, and it's just always there. Everything is there I need. I have extra gloves. Last thing I do is I put on gloves, or I take a glove off and I drop a glove. Now what do? I got an extra set, so I can always grab another one. Because last thing you do is sit up there and have your hand getting cold. You can put them in pockets, but after a while, it kind of sitting there with your hand in your pocket all the time is not a whole lot of fun. So uh, that's just some of the things that you need to look at. You don't want to get down from your tree stand just to retrieve your glove. Now, if you drop your release, I've done that, and it's like, yeah, I'd just go down and get it, then go to my backup, just because I like that one. So that's just some of the things that we're going to look at. Now, one of the things that I do have available for those that would like to get better at shooting is I have a archery coaching program. It's taught through some videos and online through a Zoom call. And what I'm offering is a free 15-minute consultation call if you'd like to see if coaching might be something for you. It may or may not, but in our questions, we can talk about it a little bit and see if coaching might be for you. It might not, and we can determine that. And it's a free 15-minute call. I'll leave a link in the description below on how to get the form to apply to get that 15-minute call. The other thing you can do to get some information, it's not quite so personalized, but Archery Talk 101 Facebook group is a group for archers to pass information back and forth. You can upload your forms, and you check your forms, questions on your bow. We have bow techs with over 20 years of experience. We have archery instructors with over 25 years of experience. We have archers that are brand new, just barely starting out, struggling with everything. We have archers that have been in shooting for 50, 60, 70 years in the group as well. Everybody has their own insight. Be active in there. And I'll leave a link to that group down below. And then another place you can look for is archertalk101.com. That's the website where I'll post a lot of content out there, as well as if I review an item, I will give a review on there so you can see if that item might be for you. There's a lot of different items that I'll review and give my critique on it. And on some of them, I'll give you a link to go purchase the item there, so that we can just kind of get some information going. If you have any questions, you can always comment. You can get on one of those places and leave a comment, and somebody will get back with you on an answer to whatever your question might be. So once again, my name is Rory Canterbury, and I have been your host today on Archery Talk 101.